The first time my sister said my name like it didn't belong to me anymore was at her wedding rehearsal dinner. Not shouted, not whispered, just edited out. I was 32 years old, sitting at the far end of a long table in a private room of an upscale restaurant in Charleston, South Carolina, watching my parents beam at my younger sister like she was the only child they'd ever had. The waiter stopped beside me, glanced at the seating chart, then hesitated. "And you are?" he asked politely. Before I could answer, my sister smiled brightly and said, "She's just here with us. Just here. Not the maid of honor, not family, not even introduced by name. Just here. My name is Claire Holloway." And that was the night I understood that whatever place I thought I held in my family had already been taken from me. Quietly, methodically, without my consent. If you had asked me a year earlier, I would have told you my family was close. Not perfect, but loyal. The kind of family that showed up for birthdays, Christmas, Thanksgiving dinner, weddings. The kind that believed blood meant something. I believed that too. I was the older sister by 4 years, the responsible one, the one who stayed near home while everyone else chased bigger lives. I worked as a project coordinator for a mid-sized construction firm in Savannah. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills, and it kept me close to my parents when my father's health started to slip. My sister, Madison, was different. Always had been. Louder, prettier, hungrier for attention. She moved to New York at 22 and came back 10 years later with a finance fiancé, a diamond ring, and a way of speaking that made every conversation feel like an audition. Our parents adored her. At first, I told myself it was normal. She was getting married. Of course the focus was on her. Of course plans revolved around her schedule, her preferences, her comfort. I adjusted. I always did. When Madison asked me to help coordinate the wedding logistics, I said yes, without hesitation. When she asked me to front some deposits because things were tied up, I didn't ask questions. When my mother suggested I move into my parents' guest room temporarily to help care for my father after his stroke, I packed my apartment and came home without complaint. That was my role. The flexible one, the reliable one, the invisible one. The first real crack came 3 weeks before the wedding. Madison called me late at night, her voice tight and rehearsed. "Claire," she said, "I need to talk to you about something sensitive." I already knew what that meant. In our family, sensitive never meant mutual. It meant final. "I've been thinking," she continued, "and with everything going on, the ceremony is feeling crowded." I waited. "I think it might be better if you didn't stand up with me," she said quickly. "Just for the ceremony. You can still be there." Of course, there it was. "You want me out of the bridal party," I said. She exhaled, relieved I'd said it for her. "I just want the aesthetic to be cohesive." Aesthetic. Another clean word. "I understand," I said. She didn't thank me. She never did. By the time the rehearsal dinner came around, I was no longer listed anywhere. Not on programs, not on seating charts, not in introductions. Just here. After dinner, my mother pulled me aside near the restroom hallway. "You're being very mature about all this," she said, squeezing my arm. "Madison is under so much stress." I nodded. "What about me?" I asked, softly. She frowned, confused. "What about you?" That was the moment something in me shifted. Not anger, not sadness, awareness. The next morning, while Madison slept off champagne and congratulations, I was at home with my father, helping him through his physical therapy exercises. My mother hovered nearby, anxious but grateful. "You're such a blessing," she said. "I don't know what we'd do without you." I almost asked her if she knew exactly what she was doing with me, but I didn't. Because part of me still believed that being useful meant being loved. I didn't know yet that usefulness was the leash. The wedding went on without incident. I sat in the third row, clapped when appropriate, smiled when cameras passed. I watched my sister promise loyalty to a man who barely acknowledged my existence. 2 weeks later, after the last thank you card was mailed, Madison invited us all over for brunch. That was when she announced she and her husband were moving into my parents' house. "Just temporarily," she said cheerfully, "until we find something bigger." My mother looked at my father. My father looked at me. No one asked my opinion. No one mentioned that I already lived there. I smiled. And that was my second mistake, because silence in my family had always been interpreted as permission, and they were about to take everything they could. They moved in on a Monday, not gradually, not politely. A rented truck pulled into the driveway before noon, and by the time I came home from work that evening, half the house no longer felt familiar. Madison's furniture filled the living room. Her boxes lined the hallway. Her husband's shoes were already by the door, like they'd always belonged there. No one had warned me it would be that fast. At dinner, Madison talked about paint colors and renovations like she was narrating a show. Her husband Ethan nodded along, scrolling through listings on his phone. "We'll probably knock out the wall between the den and the kitchen," Madison said. "Open concept feels more modern." My mother smiled. "That would be nice." I looked at my father. He didn't look at me. "What about my room?" I asked. The table went quiet for half a second. Not long enough to be awkward, long enough to be deliberate. Madison tilted her head. "Oh, Claire, we assumed you'd move back out soon." "Assumed? I moved in to help Dad," I said. "And you've been amazing," my mother said quickly. "But things are changing now." Changing. Always that word. Ethan finally looked up. "It's just temporary," he said. "We need the space." I nodded. That night, I lay awake, listening to unfamiliar footsteps above me. Laughter. Music. The sound of people settling into a life I was quietly being edited out of. Over the next few weeks, the house shifted around me. Cabinets were reorganized, photos were swapped out. Madison replaced my mother's calendar system with a shared app she controlled. She also started speaking for my parents. "Dad doesn't like that brand," she'd say when I cooked. "Mom prefers dinner earlier now," she'd add, even when my mother hadn't said a word. I watched. I learned. The first time I realized this wasn't just thoughtlessness was when my father fell. I was at work when it happened. Madison called me, irritated. "He slipped in the bathroom," she said. "We handled it." I left immediately anyway. When I got home, my father was in bed, pale and exhausted. Madison hovered like a manager overseeing a task. "You didn't need to rush," she said. "We've got this." My father reached for my hand when she left the room. "Don't let them move you out," he whispered. My chest tightened. "Are they trying to?" He closed his eyes. "They think they're helping." That night, I found a stack of mail on the counter addressed to Madison and Ethan. Utilities, internet, property tax correspondence, in their names. I brought it to my mother. "Oh," she said vaguely. "Madison said it would be easier if they handled bills." "Did you agree to that?" I asked. She hesitated. "She's very capable." The next week, my name disappeared from the utility account. The week after that, my access to the family bank app stopped working. I asked Madison about it, casually. "Oh," she said, "we consolidated things. It's simpler." "For whom?" I asked. She smiled. "Everyone, except me." By October, I was no longer consulted about anything. Doctor appointments, house repairs, family gatherings. I was informed. Or not. On Thanksgiving, I came home early from work to start cooking. That had always been my role. When I walked into the kitchen, Madison was already there with a catering menu spread out. "We decided not to do homemade this year," she said. "Less stress." "For who?" I asked. She didn't answer. When relatives arrived, Madison introduced herself and Ethan as hosts. My parents stood beside her, nodding along. No one mentioned that I lived there, that I had been the one caring for my father when everyone else was busy. An aunt leaned over and whispered, "So, when are you moving out?" I smiled. "Soon," I said. That was the night I realized something important. I wasn't being pushed out. I was being replaced. In December, Madison asked me to sign something. "Just a formality," she said, sliding papers across the dining table. "For the house. Estate planning stuff." I scanned the first page. It wasn't a formality. It was a waiver. "I'm not signing this," I said calmly. Her smile froze. "Why not?" "Because it removes me from decisions," I replied. She leaned back. "Claire, you're being paranoid." "No," I said. "I'm being careful." She stood. "We're doing what's best for Mom and Dad." I looked at my mother. "Is that true?" My mother didn't answer. That silence was louder than any argument. That night, I called a lawyer. Not to fight, to understand. Because I finally saw what love looked like in my family. And it wasn't love. It was management. The lawyer's office smelled like old books and coffee that had been reheated too many times. That comforted me. I sat across from a woman named Denise Carver, late 50s, sharp eyes, calm voice. She didn't interrupt while I explained. She didn't rush me. She just listened and took notes in neat, deliberate lines. When I finished, she folded her hands. "You're not paranoid," she said. That was the first thing she told me. "What you're describing is a slow transfer of control," she continued. "It's very common in families where one adult child positions themselves as indispensable. And the other," I asked. She met my eyes. "Is expected to be agreeable." She asked questions I hadn't thought to ask. Whose name was on the deed? Who held power of attorney? When the accounts were consolidated? Whether anything had been signed already. When I told her my parents still owned the house jointly, her expression changed slightly. "That's important," she said. "It means nothing is finalized. Yet. Before I left, she gave me a list. Not demands, not instructions. Steps. Document everything. Do not sign anything without review. Keep copies of all communications. And most importantly, do not announce that you are protecting yourself." "Why?" I asked. "Because people escalate when they realize they're losing leverage," she said. "Quiet is your advantage." I understood that instinctively. When I got home, Madison and Ethan were out. The house felt different without them. Quieter, lighter. My father was watching television, his cane resting against the couch. "How was work?" he asked. "Fine," I said, sitting beside him. He studied my face. "You look tired." "I'm thinking," I said. He nodded. "That's dangerous in this house." It was the closest he ever came to a joke. Later that night, I started a folder on my laptop. Screenshots, emails, notes, dates, times. I didn't label it anything dramatic, just family. The next incident happened 3 days later. I came home to find my room half-packed. Boxes stacked against the wall. My bookshelf emptied. Clothes folded on the bed. Madison stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "We thought we'd help you get a head start," she said. I looked at the boxes, then at her. "You went through my things," I said. She shrugged. "You weren't here." "That's not consent," I replied. She rolled her eyes. "Claire, you're acting like a victim." I stepped into the room and closed the door behind me. "Did Mom ask you to do this?" I asked. "She agreed it was time," Madison said. I opened one of the boxes and found something that made my throat tighten. My father's old watch. The one he'd given me when I graduated. Something I kept in my drawer. "I didn't give you permission to touch this," I said. Madison's tone sharpened. "This house isn't just yours." "It's not yours either," I replied. That was the first time I said it out loud. Her smile disappeared. "Be careful," she said. "You're living here because we allow it." I didn't raise my voice. "No, I'm living here because Mom and Dad asked me to." She laughed. "Asked you? Or needed free help?" I didn't respond. That night, I locked my door. The next morning, it wouldn't open. I stood there, hand on the knob, heart pounding, trying to convince myself it was a mistake. It wasn't. Madison appeared behind me. "Oh," she said lightly. "Ethan changed the locks. Safety thing." "You locked me in," I said. She frowned. "Don't exaggerate." I walked downstairs and tried the back door. Locked. Front door. Locked. "Let me out," I said. She stared at me for a long moment, then reached into her pocket and tossed me a key. "Don't make this a thing," she said. It already was. That afternoon, I emailed Denise. She replied within the hour. "They crossed a line," she wrote. "Now we move." That evening, I printed copies of everything I documented and placed them in my car. I didn't tell anyone. On Christmas Eve, Madison hosted dinner. Extended family, neighbors, friends from church. I helped cook. I always did. Halfway through the evening, Madison clinked her glass. "We have an announcement," she said brightly. "Ethan and I will be taking over the household full-time." Applause, she continued. "It's just easier this way, especially with Dad's health. Claire will be moving out soon." I stood there, holding a dish towel, watching faces turn toward me. Some looked sympathetic. Some looked relieved. Most looked away. No one asked if it was true. I smiled. That was my third mistake, because silence had always kept the peace. But this time, it was costing me my place. Later that night, after everyone left, my father found me in the kitchen. "You don't have to go," he said quietly. "I know," I replied. "Then why aren't you fighting?" he asked. I met his eyes. Because I don't need to fight. He frowned. I just need to choose, I said. Upstairs, Madison laughed with Ethan, already celebrating. They didn't know it yet, but they had just forced me to act. And once I did, there would be no going back. I didn't leave the house that night. That mattered. If I had packed a bag and driven away, Madison would have framed it as agreement, proof that her version of events was correct. Claire was moving on. Claire understood. Claire wasn't needed anymore, so I stayed. The next morning, I woke before anyone else and sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had gone cold in my hands. I watched the light change through the window. I listened to the house wake up around me. Footsteps. A door closing. The sound of Ethan's voice, low and confident, already on a call. I waited. At 9, Madison came downstairs in leggings and a sweatshirt, hair still wet from the shower. You look serious, she said, reaching for the coffee maker. I need to talk to Mom and Dad, I replied. She froze just long enough to register. They're resting, she said. Dad had a rough night. I'll wait, I said. She studied me, then nodded. Fine, but don't upset him. There it was again. Control disguised as care. By late morning, my parents sat on opposite ends of the couch. My father looked tired. My mother looked tense, hands folded tightly in her lap. Madison and Ethan stood near the doorway, like witnesses. I stayed standing. I'm not moving out, I said. No preamble. No explanation. The room went quiet. My mother blinked. Claire, I moved here because you asked me to, I continued. I left my apartment. I changed my work schedule. I took care of Dad when things were hard. I didn't do that as a favor. I did it as family. Madison scoffed. No one's denying that. You are, I said, looking at her. Every time you speak for me. Ethan crossed his arms. This doesn't need to be dramatic. I agree, I said. That's why I'm being clear. My father shifted forward. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm staying, I replied. And I'm saying nothing about this house changes without all of us agreeing. In writing. Madison laughed, sharp, unamused. You don't have that authority, she said. I turned to my mother. Do I? My mother opened her mouth, then closed it. That silence told me everything. I see, I said quietly. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't wait for permission. I picked up my bag and walked out the door. Not to leave, to do something else. I drove straight to the county records office. The clerk was kind, efficient, used to people asking questions they should have asked years ago. The deed was exactly as Denise had said. My parents owned the house jointly. No trust, no transfer, no amendment. No legal authority from Madison or Ethan to make decisions. That mattered. From there, I went to the bank. My access had been removed from the shared account, but my name was still on a separate account my father and I had opened years ago for emergencies. The balance was modest. Enough. I withdrew a portion and placed it into a new account in my name only, not to hide it, to separate. That afternoon, I met Denise again. She reviewed the new developments without visible surprise. They've accelerated, she said. That means they're afraid of losing momentum. What do we do? I asked. She slid a document across the desk. First, she said, we notify them in writing that no one but your parents has authority over the residence. Second, we establish your right to remain as a caregiver and resident. Third, we prepare for pushback. What kind of pushback? I asked. She didn't hesitate. Smear, pressure, ultimatums. I nodded. I'd lived with those my whole life. That evening, I returned home. Madison met me at the door. Where were you? She demanded. Out, I said. She stepped closer. You don't get to disappear like that. I looked at her calmly. I do. Her eyes narrowed. You're making this harder than it needs to be. No, I replied. I'm making it harder for you to pretend it's easy. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Ethan spoke instead. If this turns into a legal thing, it won't end well for you. I'm not threatening you, I said. I'm informing you. I handed Madison an envelope. What's this? She asked. A notice, I said. From my attorney. Her face changed as she skimmed it. Not anger, calculation. You went to a lawyer, she said. Yes. You didn't tell us, she said. I wasn't required to, I replied. She laughed, but it didn't reach her eyes. You think that makes you powerful? No, I said. It makes me protected. That night, My mother knocked on my door. "I don't like this," she said softly. "I know," I replied. "Madison just wants to help," she insisted. "So do I said. "But only one of us is allowed to." She didn't answer. When she left, I locked my door and sat on the bed, staring at the wall. For the first time, I allowed myself to feel it. Not sadness, loss. The loss of the version of my family that only existed because I stayed quiet. The next morning, the utilities were shut off. Not the whole house, just my room. The message was clear, and so was my response. Because this time, I wasn't going to absorb it. I was going to document it. And then, I was going to end it. Cold is a strange thing when you know it's intentional. I woke up shivering, breath visible in the dim light of my room. The heater vent was silent. The rest of the house hummed faintly with warmth. I tested the outlet by my bed. Dead. Lamp didn't turn on. Phone charger didn't light up. Selective. I wrapped myself in a sweater and stepped into the hallway. Heat. Light. Normalcy. Madison stood in the kitchen, scrolling on her phone, perfectly comfortable. "My room doesn't have power," I said. She didn't look up. "That's odd." "It's not," I replied. "It's targeted." She sighed like I was exhausting her. "Claire, you're spiraling." I stared at her for a long second, then nodded. "Okay." I went back into my room, grabbed my coat, and left the house without another word. I didn't go to work. I drove straight to Denise's office. She didn't look surprised when I told her. "They're trying to make the environment unlivable," she said. "It's a common tactic." "It feels childish," I said. "It's strategic," she corrected. "And it's documented now." She drafted a letter while I sat across from her desk, hands folded, watching the printer hum. The letter was short, factual, cold. "Cease interference with utilities. Restore full access immediately. Any further action would be considered harassment of a legal resident and caregiver." She sent it, certified. "Now," she said, leaning back, "we wait for their reaction." Their reaction came faster than expected. When I returned home that afternoon, the power in my room was back on. Heat, too. Madison was waiting for me in the living room. "You embarrassed us," she said. "No," I replied. "You embarrassed yourselves." Ethan stood behind her, jaw tight. "This could have been handled internally." "You removed utilities from my room," I said. "That's not internal. That's coercion." Madison laughed sharply. "You think a letter scares us?" "No," I said. "I think what comes next will." She stepped closer. "You're tearing this family apart." I met her gaze. "You already did. I'm just refusing to disappear quietly." That night, my mother didn't come to dinner. My father barely spoke. The house felt divided into invisible zones. Their side, my side. The next escalation came through money. My mother asked me to sit with her at the kitchen table the following morning. "We need to talk about finances," she said, eyes fixed on her hands. I waited. "Madison thinks it's time you start contributing more," she continued. "Since you're still living here." "I already contribute," I said. "In time. In care." "That's not the same," she replied quietly. "How much?" I asked. She slid a paper toward me, a handwritten list. Rent, utilities, groceries, retroactive. Retroactive. "This is new," I said. She nodded. Madison helped me calculate it. Of course she did. "I'm not paying retroactive rent," I said calmly. "And I'm not negotiating through her." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "Why are you doing this to us?" That question landed heavier than any accusation. "I'm not," I said softly. "I'm stopping you from doing it to me." She shook her head, confused, hurt. "You've changed." "No," I said. "You're just seeing me." That afternoon, I transferred the remaining funds from the joint emergency account into my personal account. Not to punish, to prevent retaliation. I also scheduled an assessment with a home health agency. Independent caregivers, documentation, oversight. When Madison found out, she was furious. "You're implying we can't take care of our own father," she snapped. "I'm ensuring he's cared for without conflict," I replied. "You don't trust us," she said. I thought of the locked door, the shut-off heat, the waiver. "No," I said. "I don't." That night, I received a message from my aunt. "Your mother is beside herself. Why are you being so stubborn?" I typed, deleted, then typed again. "I'm not stubborn. I'm setting boundaries. She never replied. On Friday, a man from the utility company knocked on the door. Madison answered. I'm here regarding an unauthorized service modification, he said. Her face went pale. I stepped into view. That was me, I said. I reported it. He nodded. We'll need to restore original configurations and note the account. Ethan swore under his breath. The man left with paperwork. Madison rounded on me. You went outside the family. I didn't flinch. You forced me to. She stared at me like she didn't recognize me anymore. That night, I slept peacefully because something had shifted. They were no longer acting like hosts. They were acting like people who had been caught. And I knew from experience that when control slips, desperation follows. The next move wouldn't be subtle, and I was ready for it. Desperation has a smell. It's sharp, metallic, like something overheated and close to breaking. I noticed it the morning Madison stopped pretending. She didn't make coffee. She didn't scroll on her phone. She stood in the kitchen in jeans and a blazer, hair pulled back tight, waiting for me like this was an appointment. We need to talk, she said. I poured myself water and sat down. She didn't. I spoke to Mom and Dad, she said. This situation is unsustainable. I waited. You're creating tension, she continued. Dad's blood pressure has been high. Stress isn't good for him. There it was. The pivot from logistics to guilt. I agree, I said. Stress isn't good for him. She blinked. That wasn't the answer she expected. So you'll cooperate, she said. I'll act in his best interest, I replied, which includes removing conflict. She leaned forward, palms on the table. Then move out. No, I said. Her jaw tightened. Claire, listen to me. I looked up, calm, still. You're not in charge of this house. She straightened. I am trying to protect our parents. You're trying to replace them, I said. There's a difference. She laughed, but it sounded brittle. You think a lawyer makes you equal? No, I said. It makes me independent. That afternoon, the home health agency arrived for the assessment. Madison hovered, arms crossed, correcting the nurse, inserting herself into every answer. The nurse, a woman named Pilar with steady eyes, took notes and said very little. When she finished, she pulled me aside. There's a lot of tension here, she said quietly. That impacts patient outcomes. I know, I replied. I'll recommend rotating care, she said, including outside support. Madison overheard. No, she said sharply. We don't need that. Pilar, he hesitated, then nodded. I'm tired, he said. Madison's face hardened. That evening, Denise called me. They filed something, she said. What kind of something? I asked. A petition, she replied. Emergency guardianship. The word landed heavily. They're claiming you're destabilizing the household and influencing your parents, she continued. They want decision-making authority transferred. I closed my eyes. When? Hearing scheduled for next week, she said. They're moving fast. Of course they were. Guardianship wasn't about care. It was about control. Once granted, it would silence everyone else, including me. What do we do? I asked. Denise's voice was calm. We respond. The next 7 days were the longest of my life. Madison became performative. Sweet in front of my parents, tearful on the phone with relatives, exhausted in public, sharp in private. Ethan avoided me entirely. My mother stopped meeting my eyes. My father watched everything with quiet dread. I compiled documents, medical records, care logs, emails, the utility incident, the waiver, the attempted lock-in. Denise organized it into a clean, unforgiving timeline. No emotions, she reminded me. Just facts. The night before the hearing, Madison knocked on my door. She looked different, pale, less polished. You don't have to do this, she said. I didn't start it, I replied. She swallowed. If this goes to court, things will come out. Yes, I said. She stepped closer. You'll hurt Mom. I met her eyes. You already are. Her voice dropped. I'm trying to secure the future. For whom? I asked. She didn't answer. The hearing took place in a small courtroom with fluorescent lights and hard benches. Madison's attorney spoke first, painted a picture of a dutiful daughter overwhelmed by a difficult sibling, used words like interference, instability, resistance. Denise stood next. She didn't raise her voice. She presented the timeline. The waiver, The utility shutoff, the attempted confinement, the financial exclusion, the home health assessment. She ended with one sentence. This is not care. This is consolidation of power. The judge leaned back. He asked Madison a single question. Why did you not include your sister in these decisions if your intent was collaborative care? Madison opened her mouth, closed it. The silence stretched. The judge denied the petition flatly. Guardianship is an extreme measure, he said. It does not apply here. Madison's shoulders slumped. Outside the courtroom, she grabbed my arm. You just destroyed this family, she hissed. I removed her hand. No, I said quietly. I exposed it. She watched me walk away, eyes burning. I didn't look back. That night, Denise sent one final message. They're cornered now, she wrote. Expect one last attempt. I sat in my room, door locked, listening to the house settle. I knew she was right. People who lose control don't let go easily. They lash out. And the next move would be the most dangerous one yet. The last attempt didn't come as a confrontation. It came as kindness. That was how I knew it was dangerous. 2 days after the guardianship hearing, Madison stopped speaking to me entirely. No arguments, no pointed comments, no passive-aggressive sighs. She smiled again, helped my mother cook, sat with my father in the evenings, holding his hand like a daughter in a commercial. Everyone relaxed. Everyone except me. Because people who suddenly become gentle after losing power are rarely changing. They're repositioning. The invitation arrived on a Sunday afternoon. Family meeting, my mother said from the hallway. Just us. No lawyers, no tension. I closed my laptop slowly. I'll be there, I said. We sat in the living room. Madison and Ethan on one couch, my parents in their usual chairs, me, alone, straight-backed, hands folded in my lap. Madison spoke first. We want peace, she said. This house has been nothing but stress. My mother nodded. We can't live like this. I waited. So, Madison continued, Ethan and I talked. We're willing to move out. There it was. My mother gasped softly. Madison. It's fine, Madison said quickly. We'll find a place nearby. But there needs to be clarity. I felt it then. The hook beneath the bait. What kind of clarity? I asked. Madison slid a folder across the coffee table. Inside were documents. Typed. Formal. Prepared. A caregiving agreement, she said. Since you want to stay, this just outlines expectations. I scanned the first page. Exclusive residency rights for Madison and Ethan. Decision-making authority over household finances. A clause requiring me to vacate with 30 days' notice if deemed disruptive. In exchange, they would temporarily relocate. It was elegant. It was vicious. This removes me, I said. It defines roles, Madison replied calmly. It defines obedience, I said. Ethan leaned forward. Claire, we're offering compromise. No, I said. You're offering distance in exchange for control. My mother looked confused. Madison said this would fix things. I closed the folder and placed it on the table. I'm not signing this, I said. Madison's smile tightened. Then we're at an impasse. No, I replied. You're at the end. Silence. I didn't want to do this, Madison said quietly, but you're forcing our hand. I stood. So am I. That night, I didn't sleep. Not from fear, from certainty. At 6:12 a.m., I received an email from Denise. They filed again, she wrote. Different angle, claiming elder financial exploitation. I stared at the screen. They weren't trying to win anymore. They were trying to exhaust me. By noon, Adult Protective Services was at the door. This time, I didn't panic. I let them in. I answered every question, provided documentation, showed care logs, medical reports, financial statements. Madison hovered nearby, visibly shaken. The investigator, a woman with tired eyes and a practiced neutrality, took notes. Before leaving, she asked one question. Who manages the parents' finances? Madison opened her mouth. I spoke first. My father and mother, I said, independently. No power of attorney has been granted. The investigator nodded. That afternoon, Denise called again. This was a mistake on their part, she said. False reporting has consequences. Then let them have them, I replied. That evening, my father asked me to sit with him alone. You're not wrong, he said quietly, but you're paying a price. I know, I said. He looked at me. I should have stopped this sooner. Yes, I said. But you didn't, he nodded. No excuses. I want to fix it, he said. I met his eyes. Then you have to act. The next morning, my parents left the house together. They returned 3 hours later with documents. My mother's hands trembled as she handed them to me. We signed, she said. Power of attorney, medical and financial, granted jointly. To me, Madison screamed. Not metaphorically. She screamed like something had been ripped from her. You manipulated them, she yelled. No, my father said weakly. We chose. Ethan grabbed Madison's arm. We're leaving. You can't, she said wildly. This was almost done. Almost. They packed, in silence. Boxes, bags, the sound of plans collapsing. Madison stood in the doorway before leaving. You think this makes you better, she said. It just makes you alone. I looked at her steadily. I was alone long before this, I said. I just stopped pretending. The door closed behind them. The house felt different immediately. Not healed, but honest. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with my parents and reviewed next steps. Care schedules, financial oversight, boundaries. No drama, just structure. I thought it was over. I was wrong. Because Madison hadn't made her final move yet. She had one more card, and she was about to play it publicly. The public move came disguised as concern. It always does. I found out the same way most people do now. Not from a phone call, not from a confrontation. From a notification. A message from a former coworker. Short. Awkward. Hey Claire, just checking in. I saw something online. Hope you're okay. I clicked the link. It was a post in a local Charleston community group. The kind that pretends to be neighborly, but thrives on spectacle. Madison's name wasn't on it, but the voice was unmistakable. Anonymous, concerned family member. The post was long, carefully worded, emotional without being explicit. It talked about an aging couple, a daughter who sacrificed everything to move home and help, another daughter who inserted herself aggressively. It mentioned legal threats, isolation, control. It asked whether anyone knew resources for parents being manipulated by a live-in adult child. The comments were already filling up. So sad. This happens more than people think. Adult children can be dangerous. Someone should check on them. My chest didn't tighten. It went cold. Madison hadn't named me. She didn't have to. Anyone who knew our family would connect the dots. Anyone who didn't would still absorb the implication. I closed the app and sat there for a long moment, phone face down on the table. This wasn't about winning anything. This was about punishment. I forwarded the post to Denise. Her reply came fast. Good. This helps. I blinked at the screen. How? I typed. Defamation by implication, she replied, and false reporting in a public forum. She's escalating publicly because she's lost privately. I didn't respond. Instead, I went upstairs and checked on my parents. My father was asleep. My mother sat by the window knitting, hands moving out of habit more than intention. Madison posted something, I said quietly. She didn't look up. I know. You've seen it? I asked. She nodded. Someone from church called. I sat beside her. She sounds worried, my mother said softly. About us. I waited. She says you've taken over, my mother continued, that we don't speak freely anymore. I turned to her. Is that true? She hesitated. Then she shook her head. No, that single word mattered more than anything else. I'm tired, she said. Tired of being managed, first by her, then by guilt. I took her hand. You don't have to explain anything, she squeezed back. I want to. That afternoon, Denise sent a cease and desist. Not dramatic, not threatening. Factual. Remove the post. Retract the claims. Cease public statements implying exploitation or abuse. Madison responded the way people do when they believe they're morally protected. She doubled down. A second post appeared that evening. This one, more emotional, less careful. It mentioned betrayal. A sister who turned lawyers on family. A home that felt like a battleground. She still didn't name me. She didn't need to. My phone rang all night. Relatives, old friends, people I hadn't spoken to in years. Some wanted clarification. Some wanted reassurance. A few wanted me to explain myself so they could feel comfortable again. I didn't explain. The next morning, I posted once. Not in the same group. On my own page. I didn't mention Madison. I didn't mention the house. I wrote, "There's a difference between care and control. Silence can look like agreement until it's survival. I'm choosing boundaries, that's all." Then I logged off. Denise called later that day. "She's been warned," she said. "If she continues, we can file." "Will it stop her?" I asked. "No," Denise said honestly, "but it will document the pattern." That night, my father had another episode. Not severe, but enough to remind all of us how fragile time was. At the hospital, Madison appeared. I hadn't called her. She swept in like she still belonged there, tears ready, voice loud enough to draw attention. "I was so worried," she said, gripping my mother's arm. My mother gently removed her hand. "We didn't call you," she said. Madison froze. "I saw the post," she said defensively. "People were concerned." The nurse cleared her throat. "Only one person is listed as medical decision-maker." She looked at me. Madison's face changed. "What?" she asked. "I have power of attorney," I said calmly. She laughed once. High, unsteady. "You think that piece of paper changes who I am to him?" "No," I replied. "It changes what you can do." The doctor arrived. Information was given. Decisions made. Madison stood to the side, powerless. Afterward, she followed me into the hallway. "You're enjoying this," she said. I shook my head. "I'm enduring it." She leaned closer. "You've turned everyone against me." I met her eyes. "You did that yourself." She smiled thinly. "Then I guess we're even." I watched her walk away. I knew then that she wouldn't stop until something forced her to. And I also knew something else. Public battles don't end with the loudest voice. They end with proof. And Madison had just handed me all of it. Proof doesn't announce itself. It accumulates, quietly, patiently, relentlessly. After the hospital incident, Madison didn't post again for a while. That worried me more than the posts themselves. Silence, when paired with humiliation, usually means regrouping. Denise thought so too. "She's consulting," she said during our weekly call. "Either with an attorney or with someone who's advising her to keep digging." "Digging for what?" I asked. "Anything that reframes her as the victim," Denise replied. "Or you as the threat." I didn't argue. I didn't post. I didn't respond to messages asking for my side. Instead, I documented screenshots of her posts before they were edited, messages sent through third parties, the Adult Protective Services reports, the guardianship petition, the caregiving agreement she tried to push through under the guise of peace. I didn't react. I built a record. The next escalation came through the family business. It was small, easy to overlook. A local property management company my parents had quietly invested in years earlier. Madison knew about it. I'd helped my father organize the paperwork after his stroke. One morning, I received an email from the company's accountant, just confirming the change request. It read, "Per Madison Holloway's instructions, future distributions should be redirected." Redirected. I called immediately. "No changes have been authorized," I said calmly. There was a pause on the other end. "She provided a signed letter," the accountant replied. My stomach didn't drop. It steadied. "Please forward it," I said. When the email arrived, I recognized the signature instantly. My mother's name. Not her handwriting. A scanned image. I forwarded it to Denise without comment. Her response came 10 minutes later. "This is forgery," she wrote, "and it's serious." I sat at the kitchen table, hands flat against the wood, listening to my parents talk softly in the other room. My mother was folding laundry. My father was half asleep in his chair. They had no idea. And that was the final line Madison crossed. That afternoon, Denise filed a report. Not dramatic, not emotional. Criminal, forgery, attempted financial diversion, pattern of coercive control. She also contacted the property management company directly, providing the power of attorney and requesting a freeze. The freeze went into effect within the hour. At 6:03 p.m., Madison called me. I let it ring. She called again. I answered. "You went too far," she said, without preamble. "So did you," I replied. "You accused me of a crime," she snapped. "No," I said. "I reported one." Her breathing was loud, uncontrolled. "You're trying to ruin me," she said. "I'm trying to stop you," I replied. There was a long pause. Then her voice changed. Lower. colder. You think anyone will believe you over me? She asked. I thought of the forged signature, the emails, the posts, the court filings. Yes, I said. I do. She hung up. 2 days later, a detective came to the house. He was polite, professional. He asked to see documents. He asked my mother a few questions. When he showed her the signature, she stared at it for a long time. I didn't sign this, she said finally. Her voice didn't shake. The detective nodded and wrote something down. When he left, my mother sat at the table in silence. I raised her better than this, she said. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. That evening, Madison posted again. This time, she named me. She accused me of stealing, of manipulation, of turning our parents against her for money. The comments were harsher now. Not sympathy, suspicion. Someone asked why there was a police report attached to her name. She deleted the post within an hour. Too late. Denise filed the final motion the next morning. A civil action for defamation, intentional interference, and elder exploitation, not revenge. Containment. The hearing was scheduled for the end of the month. I didn't feel triumph. I felt tired. But it was a clean kind of tired. The kind that comes when you've stopped absorbing harm and started redirecting it. Madison tried to call again. I didn't answer. I blocked her number. The next communication came through her attorney. They wanted to settle. I read the proposal once, then handed it to Denise. No, I said. She studied me. Are you sure? Yes, I replied. I'm not negotiating my safety. Denise nodded. Then we proceed. That night, I sat alone in my room, lights low, listening to the house breathe. This was no longer about family drama. This was about consequences. And for the first time, I wasn't bracing for impact. I was ready to end it. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Not imposing, not dramatic, just functional. Beige walls, hard benches, the kind of room where lives are changed without ceremony. Madison arrived late. She wore a navy dress and heels that clicked too loudly on the floor. Her hair was perfect, her posture rigid. She didn't look at me when she sat down beside her attorney. I didn't look at her either. Denise sat to my left, calm as ever, papers arranged neatly. My parents were not present. That had been my decision. They didn't need to witness this. The judge entered, reviewed the file, and got straight to it. This matter concerns allegations of defamation, financial interference, and forgery, he said. We will proceed. Madison's attorney spoke first. He framed her actions as emotional responses to family conflict, stress, fear, a desire to protect elderly parents from influence. He used words like misunderstanding and escalation. Denise stood next. She didn't raise her voice. She introduced evidence. The posts, time-stamped, screenshots before deletion, the guardianship filing, the utilities shut-off, the Adult Protective Services report, the forged signature, the email trail showing attempted redirection of funds. She ended with a sentence that hung in the room longer than anything else. This is not concern. This is a documented pattern of control. The judge turned to Madison. Did you create the letter authorizing redirection of funds? He asked. Madison hesitated. Her attorney whispered something urgently. I believed I had implied consent, Madison said. The judge's eyebrows lifted slightly. Did you sign your mother's name? He asked. Silence. The judge waited. Yes, Madison said finally, but only to protect her interests. The room felt very still. Denise didn't react. The judge looked down at his notes, then back up. This court finds sufficient evidence of forgery and malicious intent, he said. Civil liability is established. Madison's shoulders slumped. The judge continued. A permanent restraining order will be issued. The defendant is to cease all contact, direct or indirect, with the plaintiff and her parents, except through counsel. Madison's head snapped up. No, she said. You can't. The judge raised a hand. In addition, damages will be assessed, he said. And all claims of elder exploitation against the plaintiff are dismissed with prejudice. With prejudice. Final. Madison stood abruptly. This isn't over, she said, voice shaking. She manipulated all of you. The judge didn't look at her. It is over, he said. Sit down. Outside the courtroom, Madison collapsed into tears. Not quiet ones. Loud. Desperate. the kind meant to draw witnesses. No one stopped. Her attorney avoided my eyes. Denise placed a hand lightly on my arm. "You did what you had to," she said. I nodded. I didn't feel victorious. I felt finished. 2 weeks later, the judgment arrived. Monetary damages, legal fees, a formal finding of misconduct. Madison's appeal window was narrow. She didn't file. Instead, she moved out of state. No forwarding address. No goodbye. The silence that followed was different from before. It wasn't waiting. It was absence. At home, things settled slowly. Care routines normalized. The home health aides rotated smoothly. My parents stopped flinching every time a phone rang. One evening, my mother took my hand. "I should have protected you," she said quietly. "Yes," I replied. She nodded. No defensiveness. No excuses. "I'm sorry," she said. I squeezed her hand. "Thank you." That was enough. The house felt lighter. Not happier. Not perfect. Honest. I returned to work full-time. I re-signed a lease downtown. Not because I had to leave, but because I wanted a space of my own again. I stayed close. Just not trapped. On my last night before moving, I walked through the house slowly. This place had taught me something painful and necessary. That love without boundaries becomes control. That silence feeds entitlement. That peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's the presence of choice. The next chapter of my life didn't begin with forgiveness. It began with distance, and that was enough. Distance does something strange. At first, it feels like loss. Empty space where noise used to be. Habits with nowhere to land. You reach for your phone, then remember there's no one on the other end who has permission to interrupt you anymore. Then, slowly, it becomes relief. I noticed it one morning in late spring, standing in my new apartment downtown. Sunlight came through the windows without asking anything of me. No footsteps overhead, no voices measuring my reactions. No tension humming under the surface of every quiet moment. I drank my coffee in silence and realized I wasn't bracing for anything. That was new. Madison didn't contact us again. Not after the judgment, not after she moved. The restraining order made it clear, but more than that, the record did. Control only works when there's access. She had none. The fallout came in subtler ways. Relatives who had once called weekly went quiet. Invitations stopped coming. Group chats faded. I understood what that meant. I had disrupted the story they preferred. The one where family problems stayed private, even when they were corrosive. I didn't chase anyone. My parents adjusted slowly. My father's health stabilized. The home health aides became familiar faces. My mother started gardening again, carefully at first. Then, with more confidence. One afternoon, she asked me something unexpected. "Do you resent me?" she said. I didn't answer right away. "I did," I said finally. "For a while," she nodded. "And now?" "Now I understand," I said, "that you confused peace with avoidance, and I paid for it." She looked down at her hands. "I was afraid of conflict." "So was I," said. "I just learned that avoiding it doesn't prevent damage. It redirects it." She reached for my hand. "I'm proud of you," she said. I believed her. At work, things shifted too. Without the constant background stress, I started speaking up more. I asked for a promotion I'd delayed pursuing. I got it. Not because of what I'd endured, but because I finally stopped minimizing myself. Denise and I met one last time in early summer. "The case is officially closed," she said. "No appeals, no pending actions." "Thank you," I said. She studied me. "You did the hard part." As I stood to leave, she added, "You'd be surprised how many people never choose themselves, even when they're legally allowed to." I wasn't surprised. In July, my father asked me to sit with him on the porch. "I should have said no sooner," he said quietly. "To Madison." "Yes," I said. He nodded. "I was afraid of losing her." And instead, I said gently, "You almost lost me." He swallowed. "I know." That acknowledgement mattered. One evening, I received a message request from an unfamiliar account. It was Madison. Not a call, not a demand. A message. "I see things differently now," it read. "I don't expect anything from you. I just wanted you to know." I didn't respond. Not out of cruelty. Out of clarity. Some realizations arrived too late to require engagement. I blocked the account. That night, I slept deeply, not because everything was resolved, but because nothing was chasing me anymore. I had space, choice, agency, and I knew exactly what I would never give up again. The last thing that returned to me wasn't trust. It was choice. I noticed it on an ordinary morning, the kind that used to slip past unnoticed. I stood in my apartment kitchen, shoes on, bag by the door, and realized I was leaving because I wanted to, not because someone else needed me somewhere. No one was waiting to be managed. No decision was being made without me. The day belonged to me. That was new. For years, my value had been measured by availability. How quickly I responded, how much I absorbed, how little space I took up. I'd mistaken that for love, for loyalty, for family. What it really was, I understood now, was conditioning. My parents never asked me to move back in again after I took my apartment. They visited, they called, but the urgency was gone. The need to oversee had softened into something more respectful, sometimes awkward, sometimes quiet, but honest. In August, my mother invited me to dinner, just the two of us. She cooked my favorite meal, one she hadn't made in years because Madison didn't like it. We ate slowly, talked about nothing important. Weather, neighbors, a new bakery opening nearby. Halfway through, she put her fork down. "I didn't realize how much I leaned on you being easy," she said. I didn't interrupt. "It felt like stability," she continued, "but it was really avoidance. I let your sister take over because she demanded space, and I let you disappear because you didn't." I nodded. That's usually how it works. She reached across the table. "I won't do that again." I believed her. Not because she said it perfectly, but because she didn't ask me to reassure her. My father passed quietly that fall. No drama, no conflict. Just time. Finishing what it always does. The arrangements were simple, respectful, clear. Madison did not attend the service. She was not mentioned in the eulogy, beyond a single line acknowledging both daughters. That felt right. Afterward, standing in the quiet of the house that had once felt like a battleground, my mother asked me a question I never expected to hear. "What do you want to do now?" she asked. Not what should we do, not what would be easiest. What do you want? I thought about it. "I want to live my life without negotiating my place in it," I said. She smiled. "Then do that." I sold the house the following spring, not out of bitterness, not out of necessity, out of completion. The memories were intact, the lessons absorbed, the chapter closed. I moved to a smaller place near the water. Nothing extravagant, just enough. Enough light, enough quiet, enough distance. Work filled in around me. Friends did too, slowly, naturally, without obligation. Sometimes people asked if I missed my sister. I told them the truth. "I miss who I thought she was," I said, "not who she chose to be." That honesty surprised some people. It stopped conversations. It also stopped guilt. The story didn't end with reconciliation, or forgiveness, or a dramatic reunion. It ended with boundaries holding, with silence that wasn't weaponized, with a life that no longer required constant defense. My name is Claire Holloway. I was excluded politely, controlled gently, pushed aside under the guise of care. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I didn't perform my pain. I observed. I documented. I chose differently. The moment I stopped trying to be understood by people invested in misunderstanding me, my life became quieter, smaller in the best way. Mine. If you've ever felt yourself shrinking to keep peace, this is your reminder. Peace that cost you your agency is not peace. It's compliance. And compliance is not love. If this story resonated with you, let me know in the comments which moment felt familiar. If you've lived through family drama, betrayal, inheritance conflicts, or the quiet kind of revenge where the tables turn without shouting, you're not alone. Like the video if this spoke to you. Subscribe if you want more real-life stories about boundaries, karma, and choosing yourself. Sometimes the most powerful ending isn't loud. It's final.